Hello and welcome back to the Science of the Gaps. We're very delighted today to welcome Gary Webber. He's someone we wanted to speak to for a while, and he doesn't do a lot of podcasts or interviews and that sort of thing, or certainly not recently. So we feel very lucky to have Gary here today. Welcome, Gary. I thought just to start with, just for listeners and viewers that aren't aware of your work, I'll just read out a little bit of an intro, mainly taken from the internet. So it's Gary Webber is a respected author, researcher, and meditation expert known for his insights into non-duality, neuroscience, and consciousness. With a scientific background and decades of deep practice, he achieved a state of profound inner peace free from self-referential thought. His books, Happiness Beyond Thought and Into the Stillness, are practical, research-backed methods for mental silence, reducing suffering, and greater joy. By bridging Eastern wisdom with modern science, Webb has helped countless individuals overcome overthinking and discover a more direct, fulfilling way of being. Is that a fair summary of your background, Gary?
Sure. Although I'll point out, I was not always doing what I'm doing right now. I was in submarines for 5 years. We just spent time in Hungary for a while, in Egypt for a while. Been all over the world. I ran a business for a while, for 5 or 6 years, with 1,000 people in it. So I've been around.
Yeah. Do you have students at the moment, or what do you do in terms of working with other people interested in the subject?
But right now it's mostly I live outside of town, um, my wife. And so, as far as coming here, some people come here to see me, but mostly it's been by like this, or just a machine going back and forth.
Yeah. So just as a starting point, I'd like to zero in on a word or a phrase that came up in that introduction relating to self-referential thought. So just as a way of definition, maybe we could start there. What do you understand by thought and self-referential thought?
Well, I don't have the thoughts anymore. I mean, just there's just nothing there. I mean, there's no delivery going on. Almost never do I have a thought coming through. It's just a quiet space. It's very still. You grab inside stillness. Um, it just, it's amazing. It took 35 years, or 25 years, and 35,000 hours of practice to do it. But, what point, and I just missed wrong, harshly, a little bit. Um, but yeah, um, just keep practicing. I mean, you've got to really want to let go. I was just, well, let's practice it. At some point, one day it was like, bang, and boom, it stopped. And it just kept staying there. And stillness is my big push right now. Um, but that's very easy to do. It's difficult for me to make myself try to think. That a lot of practice, asanas and pranayama, everything you can think of. But to just stop one day.
And so do you still do practices of any kind, or is that just
Oh
a
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
I had knee surgery, and the woman who put me in knee surgery um, had the protocol. Every day I do at least 45 minutes of practice, physical practice. Excuse me, physical practice. It's really cold here. It's almost below zero.
Mm.
It was like 3 or 4 degrees Fahrenheit
Oh
yesterday.
wow. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
But and I was thinking more in with the practice. I was thinking more something like self-inquiry. Is that something that you still engage with as a practice?
Well, I did for years and years and years. You
Yeah,
just keep doing it over and over again. And I could, how many hours I did. So I told you 25,000 hours of practice, meditation or inquiry.
yeah.
And you just keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. And if you got somehow you can begin to feel it's not as strong as it was yesterday or last week or last month. Not your world, many things in my world. You say, well, okay, what did this thing mean to me? But it gets down to it, it's all instantaneous. All of our lives are instantaneous. There's no past or future. There's just now. My wife just came home, put the car in the garage. I heard her, there's a window go up and down, the car, tape up and down. And but just, I don't know how to say it. I just sit here and I live in a beautiful area, a lot of trees, Central Pennsylvania, a lot of stuff going on. And Penn State's here, I go to Penn State. Yeah, I got my degrees there. And it's just a beautiful area. So I'm surrounded by beautiful trees and snow and sleet and hail and all kinds of bad weather stuff. But it's a beautiful area, and I just happened to end up there.
I suppose just like maybe channeling the thoughts of some of the people watching who maybe some of them spend a lot of time looking at events in the world and political situations. Um, is that something that you well, I'm assuming you don't spend a lot of time dwelling or reflecting on what's happening in the world or those sorts of questions?
No, it's easy. It's almost impossible to not get you're not paying attention. You drag in politics. It's everywhere, and it gets more and more out there, and more people are getting engaged in it, and a lot of unhappy people in the world. And so they find other unhappy people and they build on this unhappiness. And so you get to where you're nothing but reading the internet all day to do with this latest news, latest internet. And just hold it, people. That's not where it's at.
Yeah.
You can't live somebody else's life for you.
I suppose they would see it as maybe keeping the uh, powers that be in check, by monitoring and tweeting and reflecting on the world situation. They're somehow maintaining some sort of or imagined peace in the future. I don't know.
Yeah, but it doesn't work. If I look at my life, I told you how varied it was, how many places I went to, and I had no control over any of that. My submarine almost sank our submarine, almost died. And it's like, okay, I'm going to go back to graduate school. um, we we, uh, we used to come out of Hoylock, Scotland, and go up to north ever, way up on top, and sit there, go to take submarine, and go underwater for 2.5 months, and come back afterward. Then come back to Hoylock, Scotland. On one trip back, we did many trips, like I don't know, just many trips. Come back, and great commanding officer, tremendous guy, and said, "Well, let's just cut a corner here. We'll just cut a little, get the guys that are running. This, where are we today? And tell me for you. Oh, this is fine. You can take this corner. Don't worry about it. Bad idea. There's a huge mountain sticking up, and we hit the mountain. There were like six compartments in the ship, and it ripped it right to just forward of the first bulkhead. Could have gone another what, 2 or 3 feet. We lost it completely. We couldn't control it. As it was, the front end started to fill you up. So I started doing this. And I was in charge of the back part of the ship. And so what's happening now is the submarine's going "Mm," like this. It's like OMG, we're this goodbye. And what happened was we got the mattresses being stuffed in the holes in the hull. And the mattresses got stuffed in there. We got ship going fast enough then. We kind of got up slowly out of the water. We're gonna make it. We made it. It was just made just by stuffing mattresses in holes in them. And then that was his last job. He was destined for admiral, and I was a senior uh, mm, officer. I was a senior officer then. That was my job, take care of that part of it. But that changed my war. It's okay. Grad school. That's why I went to grad school. You know, in another direction. But out of my command, out of my control. The whole thing just happened.
Yeah,
Didn't plan any of it.
yeah, yeah. That's,
how would you respond to people who say if you give up control, then you might do horrible things? How do you regulate your ethical behavior and so forth? Because I've had that comment come up a lot when talking about non-duality with others.
You don't have any control. You have no control anyway. I mean, we aren't in charge. There's some higher force that's running the show. And people believe I can fix this higher authority. I can plan exactly what's going to happen tomorrow morning. You can't. I mean, the most horrible thing you can imagine can happen to you or not. So I just forget about the news. The news right now is horrible, mostly across the world. It just seems hopeless for our species. And you know, women we aren't going to be around very long. Maybe people will just go away because we aren't very good at something. We've made it a real tough situation in many places. They just happen to just spring up that way. That helpful or not?
yeah, Gary, I was just reflecting that um, we have a mind, but we also have a heart.
Mhm.
Um,
Are they different?
well, there's a question. With the stilling of the mind that you mentioned, with the dropping of thoughts, self-referential thoughts, would you say that there's a natural tendency towards a greater sense of connection, empathy, and compassion in your life?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, not having thoughts, you can be compassionate very easily. There's many people you see people tremendous, real good friends, people you know, meet, whatever. You can just see how they're tearing themselves up inside, just going crazy. 7:24. My wife has it. Where's your part? And she's basically online 7:24.
Wow. Rahman, did you have any? Were you going to have answer a question there?
Yeah. So when I'm undertaking this path of self-inquiry, I sometimes have experiences that are totally foreign, and some of these experiences involve a loss of the self and the world. And there's like a very real fear of annihilation that happens when these
Mhm.
experiences happen. And I was just wondering if you'd ever dealt with that fear or if you had any advice on how to deal with that fear.
Lost of the species, or
Loss of the self and the world, like perception of the world.
we don't possess the world. The world possesses us. I mean,
Yeah.
there's some power, some energy that looked out into space, and of all the zillions of places to be, there's one this little blue ball sitting there. It just so happened to be us. And then we just could find water. Once water was created, then everything else came out of the water. And so that's how that fundamental that was. We had no control over any of that. If you look at today, well, go ahead.
Yeah, what I meant was like going into sort of like a perception of like complete emptiness, like you don't even perceive the world anymore.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't know that, you know. And I look out my window, beautiful trees, winter, frozen ice, everything. Uh, house, people, friends, room. I don't go away from the world by being quiet.
no, I meant like, have you ha ever had that experience before while in deep meditation?
What's that?
Have you ever had the experience of the perception of the world disappearing into emptiness?
No. It's a fundamental thing. We're people, we're a certain kind of form.
Yeah.
This form doesn't go away. This form stays there.
Hmm.
I don't disappear fundamentally.
So what about like what they talk about in Nirvikalpa Samadhi?
Yeah.
Uh, it's a well-known thing in Indian traditions that
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
perception disappears and so forth.
Right. But do
So,
they disappear?
well, it comes
But,
back like the
no,
whole.
but as a person, even the big, the high people, I've been 35 years at this stuff. Even the highest people you can find, take any religion. They've all got their own ideas of how it's supposed to going to run, but it doesn't run that way. They try to make it hold still, but it's not going to be still. The earth is this, and we are people, and people have certain personalities and certain characteristics, physically, intellectually, scientifically, and you can't stop them.
Yeah.
I want you to know that, you ever tell somebody to blow up, right? But even if you get very quiet, it's just very quiet in here. There's still trees out.
Yeah. I've definitely had that experience of like everything being quiet in here,
Yeah,
and everything outside also like remaining as it is. But sometimes I also have the experience of like everything becoming like empty or unreal or like it seems ethereal. Does that make sense to you?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But it is real. It is real. I mean, yes, I got you, but I can disappear. It's an eye, and you feel this great stillness.
Yeah.
Helpful?
Dr. Webber, do you think self-inquiry is applicable and appropriate for everyone, no matter where they are in their lives, their mental health, um, just their personal circumstances?
Very small percentage of people who do self-inquiry. Tiny. You can test me. People who want to actually inquire. They're so busy with their life, they can't imagine stopping and asking themselves a bunch of questions about themselves. So it's a rare population.
Would you say that there's a danger or a possibility that we know this term um, spiritual bypassing, avoiding life's problems through sort of techniques or practices? Is there a possibility of a danger of that with this process, would you say?
Well, you've got to, somehow it has to manifest in what you somehow decide to do. I mean, if you look where I came from, what I did and everything, where I lived, you never would have imagined that I would ever go through 35 years of practice to get to this point. It was just so far away from what I could even conceive of. Say, my gosh, I can be not here and yet still experience everything. That helps with.
If it's okay, I'd like to ask a question about the spiritual traditions. And I know you're an individual and you have your own message and model, but as you understand it, with um, why notice spiritual figures often give contradictory information, almost like they're giving one message to one person and another message to someone else. And then to the uninitiated, that might just look like confusion or contradiction, or they don't know their stuff. What do you think's going on there in those cases?
Well, I can't control that. I mean, if I go to the supermarket or whatever, um, I just you can't control it. You walk in the door, you have no control over the rest of the people in that room. None, zero. And so you think I'm going to be in control of the situation? You're not going to be. Big supermarket, whatever it is, you want to be in control of what? You got to go for I'll buy some groceries, some tea. You buy tea. Oh, what kind of teas do I have? Many kinds of tea. Blah 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 blah. But you don't get lost. Spend your life worried about tea. You get what's around, and it's whatever's available, and you've got to buy the tea, and you go away. So I don't know how else to tell you. Um, I keep living. Like I'm more alive now than I ever have been because I'm not there. But that's like oxymoronic, but that's the loop.
Do you consider yourself a teacher?
People do.
You don't.
Yeah, yeah, they do. I,
You do.
I have a blog, and you see my 4 or 5 books and blog and all kinds of things. So yeah, they do.
Hmm.
Um,
What is the role of the teacher? What's the power of the teacher?
well, ideally to get out of the way. I mean, get people to understand that they don't have to be going crazy. That you can live a life and have a very peaceful, quiet existence, and yet be doing many things at the same time. But you can't plan it out. And they would be made out of tea at the Walmart, I guess.
I've heard you say that your practice started with just self-inquiry, but then soon developed into chanting and like something resembling bhakti. Could you elaborate on that?
Uh, Chanting. I use my books. The first book.
Yeah, yeah, I've read
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. That's the best book. My first book and my last book are the best book. But this book is what I wrote it. And so somehow, some power, this guy,
I love that
uh,
guy.
this guy got involved, and I really got hooked into him. And I just read his stuff, and they had the chants, and they had a whole practice that were going on at the time in India. And so you can see a lot of things happening, but nobody had a clear vision until then.
You had an experience when you were visiting Ramana Ashram.
Mhm.
Could you talk about it?
I had lots of them. What was, uh,
I think you mentioned it in your blog about how something overtook you and you were gone for like an hour or so.
yeah, yeah. I was practice, doing all the stuff. It's in the book with Robin's, stuff. And suddenly one day it was just gone. It just stopped. It wasn't like I planned it, but I did it for 35 years and, 25,000 hours. It was like, okay, it's gone. So it didn't come walking down the street. There was a lot of preparation and hard work and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours to get to the point to where it just fell away.
No, sorry, I meant the experience you had at Ramana Ashram.
Yeah, when we, I was there, yes, I was our nostril, I went into the caves and did everything of what you do. And it was a useful experience to have actually physically gone to where he actually sat, lived, and died right in that one little place. And so, yes, physically seeing where he had been and what he had done helped me to understand what he went through and how dedicated he was to that process. He did nothing to take care of people from his place usually. He doesn't go around India. He just stayed in one place for long years, many years.
Have you ever met anybody who has no thoughts like you do? Living today?
Not many, almost nobody. I just
Nobody.
I try and explain it to people, and I still got the books and everything. But to have somebody believe today in U.S. or India or wherever that they can have no thoughts, they just can't conceive of it. You can
Some
have
people
fewer thoughts. Go ahead.
some people seem to get really offended at this idea of no thoughts. Like when I bring it up, people get really angry at me. Why is
Well,
that?
it's very challenging them because you're saying it's possible to have no conscious ongoing thought. It is. You've got to do self-inquiry. Not as much as many years as I had to do it because there are books around that talk about it. But no, uh, it almost nobody has seems to, especially now. We're a mess right in the United States. So in India too. But I don't. She go running around try to say, "Hey, I don't want to have any thoughts today." They're working the other side. They think if they have enough thoughts, their life will get better. It doesn't work out that way. You just have more and more and more problems, more and more thoughts, and more conflicts in your mind.
Gary, during the lockdown, I contracted COVID and I got quite sick. I got very sick,
Yeah.
and something curious happened to me whereby every thought I had, I experienced as pain in the body.
Uh,
It was impossible to think because thought itself was almost too taxing on my system.
sure.
Uh, and one day I got up and I made a cup of tea, like a
Yeah.
good Englishman, and I went about my day, and I slowly discovered that I was getting quite a few things done, albeit in
Yeah.
my sickly state, without any thought whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that the same thing that you're talking about, do you think?
Yeah. I mean, COVID was COVID. And it was a whole different beast. And it
Yeah,
was when it came in, it was like, oh, LMG. It's horrible. Like, we'll wipe out the race. We come to cope with it, found ways, serums, and get way out of it. But yeah, I uh, just don't think. I mean, just don't get. Go ahead.
it made me very aware of the effect of the thoughts on the body,
Yeah,
because I assume this is happening all the time, but I was in such a weakened state that it became blindingly obvious to the point where I couldn't think anymore, and yet I still was able to make drinks and a bit of food.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly. That's it. You have this enormous threat, physical threat, and you think, uh, you know, what can I do? And the answer is nothing.
yeah.
Just you
That's how it
really,
felt. Yeah,
yeah,
it felt, and it also felt like yeah, life wasn't going anywhere.
mhm,
There was nowhere to get to, um, and yet still, it appeared I was getting up and doing things.
yeah.
Yeah, for a
And,
few
and
days.
you try to watch who's doing this stuff. And you're like, here, raise this hand. Now, do I think to raise that hand? The hand gets raised. It just happens. If I had to think about how I move these fingers, I'd never move. You just realize, okay, this is happening. This is how the body does this thing. There's some power, some energy that makes it happen.
Yeah.
But you can't analyze each individual step.
I've sometimes heard the mind mentioned almost like an installation, like it's almost like a virus or a being that wants to maintain its control. It's a, is
Yes,
that just a metaphor? Is there some truth to that, do you think?
I could we you get different people come towards you. You don't know what they're going to do to you, good or bad. You begin now with, since the internet came online, everything, tools we have in our hands, it's pervasive. Here in Penn State, in the United States, people live on their phones, just live on those phones. You talk to them, back pocket, Charlie, hey, Ned, talk to Mary, call Mary, get some talk, get some tea. I think this is their life now, these phones. Not even television, these are phones. They live on those phones. So I think that's really taking a bad turn for us. It's dehumanized our existence because that machine, this little hand, this little thing, taking over our lives.
With the illusion perhaps of connection or greater connectivity to the world, but it sounds like you're saying that that's actually adding to our mental dialogue and our isolation in a way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, like I say, here, everybody, like me, has a phone, big phone, and their life is on that phone. If they don't have that phone with them, they are out of commission. That's been the last 5 years.
So, do you think if we move on to something beyond that internal dialogue that makes us do all these addiction fueled things in our lives, do you think that actually makes us more us? Like it lets the real us come out more? Because people think of it as you're destroying yourself when you undergo this path. But I feel the more I surrender into this quietness, it seems like I'm actually more of myself. I can express myself more.
Exactly. Exactly. You do exactly what you just said. You just keep doing it. Keep letting go and letting go and letting go. You say, oh, the world's going along without me. I don't have to do anything. I can't pick up a glass of orange juice by myself. Somehow that happened. I don't have to think about all the things I have to do to pick up a glass of orange juice.
To move on to another topic, um,
Sure.
do you think the people like Tony Parsons and Jim Newman, their radical approach to awakening, do you think that ever works on anybody, or is it like a waste of
Well,
time?
I've seen, it's been along many years now. I've seen a lot of people come and go in this whole scene. There are lots of guys who are good in this area, this area, this area, this area, this area. Yes, for different folks, it'll work for them. But very few of them want to really sit down and just self-inquire and do some chanting, do practices. If you do it, practice it very enough times, and do what we're talking about, then it's less and less and less and less and less. And then someday it'll be like, oh, and you're not there anymore. You're there, but you're not there anymore.
But also, we have no control over that. There's no one doing that either, right?
That's right. Exactly. I mean, the whole thing is out of control. There's somebody else running it. There's some other power, I call it God, Jesus, whatever we call it, running the thing. And I call it she because she would be very nice. Is it's manifested the same exact way. Decided, okay, you're going to be here. Listen, this glass of orange juice now, and I never do that. She made it happen.
So is it conceivable that someone could report the same experiences of you as you, but without having done any inquiry or spiritual practice?
Sure, it's been awesome. I don't. The people I run into, I don't. There aren't many of those people around. Yes, it's possible. but that we got to come somehow. For me, it was a job. It was a lot of work to do because I was so conditioned a certain way. Then come in and say, "Oh no, I can stop all this." Folks couldn't be any further from my mind than where I have been at times in the past.
Yeah.
Just stopped away. Just stopped away.
To be fair, I've never really seen anybody like achieve this without any kind of practice. Like even Ramana had to sit down 11 years
Yeah,
in darkness.
yeah. Rama sat down in the cave, the little
Yeah,
cave, and just meditated. That's all he did. And practicing, he chanted and stuff. But he had to really devote his life, every breath he took, to that process. And
yeah.
eventually, you heard me better. One day, oh, it changed.
Yeah, that's kind of why personally, people like Tony Parsons, they kind of annoy me because I feel like they're actually hurting people by telling them you don't have to practice. I mean, I feel like it prolongs their neurosis and their suffering.
If you're a soccer player, you say, look, yeah, you don't have to practice soccer. Just go out and start kicking the ball around. It doesn't work out that way. People are train and train and train and train and train so they can play soccer well. You see, both levels of the thing, but that's completely out of their control too. Therefore, the soccer guys are going to do it or not, and it'll be good or not. Is they dedicated to it or not?
All right,
Is
maybe
it
I'll start
helpful?
taking some questions from the community now.
Okay.
Um, so Jacob asks, what do you think is the biggest misconception about non-duality that prevents people from recognizing what is already present?
Yeah, please. Okay. On to Wellesley.
That prevents people from recognizing what is already present.
If you walk my neighbor's house and say, you know, you don't really exist. What do you mean? I'm here in my house, my car. I exist. Yeah, but you have control of the situation. Can you, in the course of the day, decide what's going to happen to you that day? You have any control over any of them. There's a bunch of things happening around you, and you can't be in control. It's not physically possible. Is that helpful or not?
Yeah.
I'm definitely seeing a theme here, Gary, of no,
Pardon?
I'm definitely sensing a theme of no control. We're not in control.
You're not in control. You're not in control.
Yeah,
Don't try to be. And
yeah,
the more you try, the more stressed out you'll be, and the less likely you are to be successful. If you just let go, most of the great football players or soccer players, they don't sit there and think about all day about how can I get my foot this way? How can I kick the ball this way? How can I work the ball this way? How can I talk to Nancy and John over here? Kick this guy. That's this body learns into that. They don't sit there and think about it. They can see themselves changing as they work the ball around the field. Maybe better or not.
Jacob also asks, what role does, if any, does emotion play in your experience now? Is compassion something actively felt, or does it arise more as spontaneous, intuitive action?
They say it again. It's a good question.
He says, what role, if any, does emotion play in your experience now? Is compassion something actively felt, or does it arise more as spontaneous action?
Yes. Hmm. Yeah. It's quiet all the time, and situations arise, and you are in that situation. You try to respond to it. There's no trying to respond. You just respond to it. There's no
But
control over it.
I think what he's asking is like, do you feel compassion or anger or anything before you respond, or do you just respond without like a feeling popping up?
Yes. B. if it arises at all. And I can feel compassion for somebody. There's some very good friends, and you can feel compassion for them. But I look at our politicians in the United States, and I don't have any compassion at all for them. I mean, they're out of control. They're lunatic. You say they are not. They're in charge of the business. Oh, they're running the governor, or taking care of things. It's a mess. It's an absolute horrific mess. It couldn't be more out of control. They think they're the leaders.
Can't disagree with you there. He also asks, do you think neuroscience will ever be able to pinpoint or at least model the shift into non-dual awareness?
We can do it already now. I mean,
Yeah.
I just ask the question enough times, do the practice enough time. You don't have to recreate something. You create something new. It's there. Books about it. There's a lot of people. These little things. Just have to be diligent enough and interested enough to do self-inquiry.
Yeah, but not a lot of people like want to do 10,000 hours though.
That's right. And they all of them don't. So they do what they want to do. That's out of our control. They just go ahead and do it.
I've heard some people talking about like using magnetic stimulation or something like that to induce non-dual awareness. Are you familiar with that at all?
No, not magnetic stimulation. No,
Hmm. All right then.
but you can take drugs. We have U.S. has full all kind of drugs. You know, 85 different ways to zone out. Weed or heroin, and just the whole list. And that's a way out of really meeting up with the world. Running a line of coke every day. And it's like, oh, what's your life about, guy? And what happens if you're running a line of coke? Oh, I don't know. I'll probably fall apart. So I keep doing coke. So it's just, and they had no control over that either. I mean, their personality and their situation drive them to using cocaine.
My friend Arthur says uh, to Dr. Weber, is life worth starting? And if so, why?
Is life worth what?
Is life worth starting? And if so, why?
Starring or starting?
Starting.
Life worth starting.
Yeah.
You had no choice in it. When you were a baby, you popped out. You didn't have any choice in it. Your mom, she manifested you. And somebody got her pregnant until you came along. You had no control of that situation.
I think people intuitively they see a link between their thoughts and outcomes in the world. So I have a thought. I keep talking about tea today, don't I? But I'll say it again. I want to make a cup of tea, and then my body gets up and makes a cup of tea, and so there's an assumption that thinking has this causative effect on our lives. So therefore, we have to spend a lot of time monitoring our thinking and make sure we got the right thoughts. Maybe something like that's happening in people's experience.
They aren't paying attention. Your point. Tea. I'll go make some tea. I don't have to think about how to make tea. Tea making happens.
Yes.
And there was no special way to go at that. It just manifested. I feel like some tea. I'll make some tea. But the initial drive to go get tea just came out of no place. And I think that's what your life is.
So they're not really going into the experience. They're seeing a very low definition interpretation that thoughts are creating their reality.
Yeah, the thoughts don't create anything.
Yeah.
Thoughts get in your way. And if you don't have thoughts, it'd be surprising how much more effective you can be in everything. You aren't thinking about what everything you're doing, what Nancy said, or what John said, or what the president said, or what you said. Just don't pay attention to it. We were a lot better off 30 years ago didn't have all the crap we have right now, all the electronics, the internet, everything else. Life was a lot better 30 years. I think it's a mess now. It gets worse and worse every day. As technology advances, we move out of the scene. The technology was living. We are.
Dr. Weber,
Yeah.
one of our hosts, Sandy, wasn't able to make it tonight, but she's a multiple times near-death experiencer. She's
Yep.
had many near-death experiences, and it seems interesting to me that near-death experiences and mystical experiences have a lot in common. Like a dissolution of the self, a feeling of unconditional love, a sense of pers expanding into everything, and so forth. Um, I was wondering what you think about near-death experiences and whether they might give us a clue on what happens after we die.
I don't worry about what happens after we die. Mhm. Yeah, if you're really sick, you've been through terrible traumas with medical, physical things, then you're really threatened. Your physical body is threatened. Your response to that, though, is what you can control. You can go psychotic about it, or you can be really logical and constructive and talk to the right people and do the right practices and do the right things, take the right drugs. Um, that's all out of our control. Even being near death or not, you could have died. She had no control over that. Yeah, like it or not. Does that satisfy her?
And
We'll get
no,
back, we'll get back to you. We'll tell you.
another question from the audience is, uh, if the self-referential stream is absent, how did decisions arise? Can you describe that feeling of doing things without an internal narrator?
Yeah, I do it every day. And everybody else does too. I'll do the orange juice. How do I know? How do I know how to do that? I practice that. Just there. You eat something, your consciousness then goes out and grabs a glass of orange juice. But you come in and think about it. Watch yourself pick up for anything.
It seems to me that the thought comes after the fact, like after you pick up a glass of water or orange juice or whatever, something in your brain says, "Oh, I did this." But I mean,
That's
your
right.
body does it first.
That's right. Exactly. But they
Yeah.
that's the step they don't take. They don't come back then and then try to analyze what they did. Just recognize the fact that it happened. I felt orange juice desiring came along. And so I went got some orange juice. I didn't pre-think the orange juice denied. No. Yes, no?
Heard, I, I've heard you use the metaphor of the rider and the elephant. So, like, the elephant's the one actually moving, and the rider
Mhm.
just takes the credit for everything.
Exactly. Exactly. And that happens in the world a lot, almost all the time. I did that. I was the one who took charge of this thing. He wasn't. The elephant was in charge.
To a smaller extent, I feel like this might apply to like all the billionaires in society right now, where they're saying, "I did all the work and I deserve this."
Yeah.
But
It's
it's like,
not a mind that one guy, the biggest, richest guy in the world, got there. It was very planned culture. Boom, 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 boom. But realistically, he had no control over any of that either.
yeah.
It was a very fundamental level. All those decisions were not made by him. They happened. Yeah.
So, another question from Emma. Uh, why is self-inquiry one of the few things that makes me fall asleep?
She didn't want to do it. She's afraid to do it.
No,
She's afraid.
she says she
Right.
actually likes doing it. It's just it makes her fall asleep like very quickly.
Fine, then do it. And that self-inquiry stops thinking. You inquire into yourself. She does, so she goes to sleep. Then it's gone. In the moment, it's gone. You don't spend all night if you're sleeping, self-inquiry. You're just sleeping.
Another question from Jacob is, do you think spontaneous and gradual awakenings are the same in nature, or are there meaningful differences?
I haven't seen any people who spontaneously just boom, they're awake. I haven't seen those people yet. Almost everybody who's become what quasi awake, partially awake, has gotten there through either frustration with their situation or some practice of taking them out of it.
You said that people that claim spontaneous awakening,
Right.
you said you've not met anyone that meets that criteria.
With no practices, no training, no nothing. They just
Yeah,
walked down the street and they were awake one day.
right. So if they told you, if they hadn't disclosed whether they'd practiced or not, would you be able to, just by observing their nature, would you be able to know whether they were awakened or not?
Would I be? No, no, you can't know. I couldn't know.
Okay.
I've heard of like, and I think you write about this in your book too, that when undergoing this process, you develop something they call cities, like
Right,
powers or
right.
so forth, where you can like give a taste of this experience to other people if you wanted to, and like you were able to manifest anything you wanted for a period. Could you talk about that?
You trying to manifest a pile of gold out of my door here. No, I can't do that. No, I've not seen the company you're talking about. It was spontaneously they're awake walking down the street. I haven't seen that. Ramen didn't do it either. And Ramen had practice. And so I don't see anybody who just spontaneously become awake and say that. Never
Yeah,
seen them.
yeah, but what I meant was that uh, you did write in your book about developing cities and how you had to let them go at some point.
Oh yeah, right. If you cling on to them, yes.
Yeah,
So just on the theme of abilities and powers that we hear about through spiritual traditions, um, what one phrase I hear is transmission. So it's the idea that, someone that has attained a certain degree of spiritual development is able to confer that or transfer that onto another person, just being in their presence, rather
No,
like Ramana.
no,
What would you say about that?
I've never seen it.
Yeah,
I mean, just walk down the street and you know you can go. And you're healed, you're clear. No, I've never seen that. And if they aren't doing something to work on themselves.
yeah,
You can't just spontaneously happen just walking down the street.
yeah.
I've never seen it.
Okay, thank you so much.
thank
You
you very
too.
much, Gary.
Yeah, take care.
And you.
You too.
Bye.